The galaxy had learned one thing about humans over the past decade. They didn't fight fair. But they'd also learned something else. Humans didn't always fight. The Galactic Dominion, a coalition of alien warlords, had arrived with fleets that blotted out skies. Their ships were kilometers long, armed with weapons that could boil oceans and slag continents. They hit Earth first, expecting a quick surrender. They got it. The surrender was signed in 24 hours. No orbital battles. No resistance. No last stands. Earth handed over its weapons, its fleets, its colonies. The Dominion called it the most cowardly capitulation in recorded history. In the years that followed, humans were branded the galaxy's joke. On every Dominion world, you could buy a holo toy of a human in rags, waving a white flag. Drunken alien soldiers told stories about softskins who cried when they saw a gun. Young Dominion cadets were told Earth was proof that mercy was wasted. It might have been true, if not for the men and women the Dominion never saw. The Dominion's 14th Legion was stationed on Vraxis III, a backwater mining moon rich in thorium. The Legion's commander, Marshal Zoveth, stood on a balcony overlooking the labor pits. Tens of thousands of humans worked below under the harsh light of triple suns, their backs bent, their faces burned, their hands bloody from raw ore. He sipped his dark liquor, the kind brewed from the fungal vines of Gratis Prime, and laughed with his officers. "They break so easily," Zoveth said, gesturing to a collapsed miner being dragged away by drones. "Their bones snap like wet wood. And their eyes." He swirled his glass, savoring the thought. "Their eyes always have that begging shine. I almost enjoy it." His aide, Lieutenant Harkis, smirked. "Cowards, Marshal. Every last one of them. I doubt they even have warriors." The statement was heard by someone they didn't notice, a small human boy, no older than 12, scrubbing the floor behind the officers. His name was Eli Ward. His father had been a Marine before the surrender. His mother had been taken away 2 years ago for disciplinary relocation and never returned. Eli kept his head down, but his ears sharp. When Harkis called humans cowards, Eli's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. 2 days later, the Dominion made its mistake. It started as a reprimand operation. A human foreman had been caught smuggling food to the miners. Dominion law was clear: public execution. The Legion wanted an example. The miners were dragged into the central square of Outpost 9. Armed guards ringed the area, their plasma rifles slung lazily at their sides. The condemned foreman, a broad-shouldered man with callous hands, was forced to his knees. Zoveth stepped forward with a ceremonial execution blade, a curved, black metal weapon etched with the sigils of the Dominion. The square was silent. The only sound was the whine of mining rigs in the distance. Zoveth held the blade high and spoke, his voice booming over the loudspeakers. "This is what becomes of cowardly thieves. You are conquered people. You live because we allow it. You breathe because we choose not to take the air from your lungs." He swung the blade. The foreman fell, blood steaming on the cold steel floor. Some humans turned their eyes away. Some wept. Most stood still, their faces expressionless. And that's when the marshal made the fatal error. He pointed at Eli, standing near the back. "You," Zoveth sneered. "Come here." Eli froze, heart hammering. The soldiers shoved him forward until he stood before the marshal. Zoveth's black eyes studied the boy. "Tell me, little coward, do you think your kind will ever rise against us?" Eli's mouth went dry. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him. "No," he whispered. Zoveth grinned. "Good. You know your place." He turned to the crowd. "Remember this. Humanity's courage died the day we arrived." He tossed the boy aside and walked off, laughing. But Eli wasn't lying when he said, "No." He wasn't thinking of humanity. He was thinking of someone else. That night, Eli found the old comms array. It was deep in an abandoned storage block, long stripped of Dominion tech. But hidden in the rafters, where no one had thought to check, was a transmitter his father had shown him years ago. It was tuned to a frequency Eli didn't understand, but he knew the code. He keyed the MIC, his hands shaking. "Echo 1, he said, repeating the phrase his father had drilled into him. "Vraxis 3, Outpost 9, Boogeymen needed." The words meant nothing to the miners. But to certain ears, light years away, it was a flare in the dark. 3 weeks later, Marshal Zoveth received a message from orbit. A human transport ship was approaching, unarmed, unescorted. Its ID tagged it as a Dominion-sanctioned freighter delivering labor replacements. The Marshal didn't bother with formalities. The freighter landed in the dust fields outside Outpost 9, its hull scarred and dull. The ramp dropped with a hiss of hydraulics. 6 men walked out. They wore no armor, no uniforms, just dark fatigues and boots. Their faces were hidden under low-brimmed caps and mirrored sunglasses. Each carried a battered duffel bag. Zoveth laughed when he saw them. "This is your replacement crew," he said to the docking officer. 6 humans? You could have sent 1 and it would have been enough. The men didn't answer. They didn't even look at him. They walked past the guards like they didn't exist, heading straight into the heart of the outpost. It wasn't until later that the Marshal realized something. The guards they passed didn't move again. By nightfall, the power went out across Outpost 9. The comm towers went dead. The watchtowers stopped reporting in. Zoveth stood on his balcony, staring at the black horizon. He could hear something moving in the dark. Not the clank of Dominion drones, not the shuffle of miners. Something else. Screams began to cut through the night. Not long, drawn-out screams. Quick ones. Wet ones. His aide burst into the room, panting. "Marshal, the humans, they are killing us. We can't see them. They're everywhere." Zoveth frowned. "What do you mean everywhere? How many?" The aide swallowed. 6. The Marshal laughed in disbelief. 6? Against an entire legion? You expect me to believe. Something hit the balcony rail beside his head. It was small, round, warm. A Dominion soldier's severed eye. And from the shadows below, a voice spoke. Calm, cold, American. Boo! The voice was quiet. Too quiet. It didn't come from one spot. It came from everywhere. Marshal Zoveth's aide drew his sidearm, scanning the darkness below the balcony. His mandibles clicked nervously, sweat beading under the ridges of his armored carapace. Something moved in the shadows, a flicker, a silhouette. Snap! The aide's head jerked sideways, a neat hole burned through it. He collapsed without a sound, his weapon clattering to floor. Zoveth backed up. Guards! Light the perimeter. Find them. Searchlights flared to life across Outpost 9, slicing through the darkness and revealing nothing. No humans. No movement. Only empty streets and flickering holosigns. Then one light went out. Then another. Then 3 more, until the entire east side of the compound was in darkness again. Zoveth's combi crackled in his ear. It wasn't the voice of a Dominion soldier. It was human. You should have kept your mouth shut, Marshal. The 6 men moved like ghosts. The first was Mason Kane, tall, broad-shouldered, his face hidden behind a beard and a shadow. Former DevGru, 20 confirmed Black Ops missions no one officially admitted happened. In his duffel, suppressed rifles, breaching charges, knives. His specialty, speed and shock. The second, Torres, was smaller, wiry, Force Wrecker Marine. A knife in one hand, silenced pistol in the other, always moving, never where you expected him. The third, Doc Holloway, was their medic, though most of the time his job was making sure enemies didn't need medical attention at all. Then there was Briggs, explosives. Walsh, sniper. And Vance, close-quarters specialist, the one Dominion soldiers would meet last, if they were unlucky. They didn't speak much. Didn't need to. This wasn't war. This was extermination. Torres was the one who took the eastern watchtowers. He didn't climb. He was already there before the sentries knew. A knife across the throat. A silenced pistol to the base of the skull. Their bodies dropped quietly into the dust. Walsh was half a kilometer away, lying prone on a rusted pipeline, his rifle wrapped in cloth to muffle the sound. Every time a spotlight swung across the yard, he put a single round through its operator's head. The lights blinked out like dying stars. Briggs planted small charges on the fuel silos, timed not to blow yet, just enough to keep Dominion troops penned in, afraid of the fire that could come at any moment. Mason took the barracks. He didn't knock. 1 kick to the steel door, 2 shots, and the first squad inside went down before they'd drawn breath. He swept room after room, methodical, silent. They called themselves the Boogeymen for a reason. They didn't attack like soldiers. They attacked like nightmares. The Dominion tried to rally. Hundreds of soldiers in chitin armor poured into the central square, plasma rifles ready. Commanders barked orders, trying to form firing lines. A voice came over their comms, cutting into every channel. You've been hunting sheep so long, you forgot what wolves look like. The voice wasn't mocking. It wasn't angry. It was calm. That scared them more than any threat. Then the first explosion hit. Briggs's charges blew along the west wall, sending shards of ferrocrete through the air. The shockwave dropped a dozen soldiers before the humans even stepped into view. Torres appeared in the chaos, moving between shadows, his blades catching only brief glints of light before they slid into alien flesh. A soldier turned to fire and had his weapon wrenched away, his throat open before he could scream. Mason dropped from a rooftop into the center of the formation, rifle barking in short, controlled bursts. Every shot was a kill. No wasted rounds. No panic. Just precision. Doc came behind him, not with a medkit, but with a shotgun. At close range, the Dominion's armor might as well have been paper. Within minutes, the square was no longer a formation. It was a slaughterhouse. From his balcony, Zolvath watched in disbelief. "Where are they coming from?" he shouted into his combead. No answer. He switched to command frequency. All forces fall back to. The words cut off as a round crack passed his head, splintering the wall behind him. He dropped flat, crawling back inside. Another voice came over the comms. "Marshal, you can run. You can hide, but we're already in your shadow." It was Walsh, the sniper, and when Zolvath risked a glance out the window, he saw nothing but the dark horizon, until his eyes adjusted, and he realized there was a figure prone on a far roof, rifle aimed directly at him. He ducked again. This was impossible. 6 men couldn't. Another explosion rattled the compound. The east fuel silo went up, a ball of fire lighting the dust clouds. The shockwave knocked Zolvath against the wall, his ears ringing. He looked up, and one of them was in the room. Vance, silent, no gun in hand, just a long, curved blade. The marshal went for his sidearm, but Vance crossed the distance before the weapon cleared its holster. The blade kissed the side of Zolvath's throat, not cutting, just a warning. "You called humans cowards," Vance said quietly. "We took that personal." Then, as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone, into the smoke, leaving the marshal shaking. By midnight, Outpost 9 wasn't a Dominion stronghold anymore. It was a graveyard. The Boogeymen didn't leave bodies in neat rows. They left them scattered, in alleys, in watchtowers, in the command center where Briggs had set a final charge that reduced the upper floors to molten slag. The humans freed the miners without speeches or ceremony. Torres cut the locks. Doc checked the wounded. Mason simply said, "You're leaving with us." Eli Ward was among them, his eyes wide as he stared at the 6 men. He'd imagined them 1,000 ways in sending that call, but seeing them in person, he understood why the Dominion feared their name. They didn't look like heroes. They looked like tired men who'd been doing this for too long. But their eyes held something sharp, something dangerous. "What happens now?" Eli asked Mason. Mason crouched, meeting the boy's gaze. "Now, kid, we send a message." Hours later, Zolvath woke in the dust outside the outpost. His hands were bound. His command badge was gone. Around him were the corpses of his soldiers. A data pad lay in the dirt beside him. Its screen flickered to life, playing a recorded transmission. A human voice spoke. "To the Dominion, you called us cowards. You thought surrender meant submission. You forgot something important. We didn't surrender our ghosts. We didn't surrender the men who do the things you don't see. We didn't surrender the Boogeymen." The transmission cut to a final image. 6 silhouettes walking through the dust, the outpost burning behind them. The pad shut off. Zolvath was left in silence, the stench of smoke thick in the air. Somewhere out in the black, he knew those 6 men were already moving to the next target. And for the first time in his life, Marshal Zolvath understood fear. The destruction of Outpost 9 rippled through the Dominion like a virus. At first, it was dismissed as a minor revolt. Then the casualty reports came in. 1 full legion wiped out. 6 attackers. No survivors except Marshal Zoveth, and his testimony was a trembling mess of half-coherent warnings. Not soldiers. Not like anything you fought, he told the Dominion Council via holofeed. They see you before you see them. They kill and vanish. They're everywhere and nowhere. You can't, his voice cracked. You can't fight shadows. The Council didn't believe him. The Dominion was vast. Its armies had crushed warrior species older than humanity. 6 unarmored humans were nothing compared to their war machines. So they made the worst decision possible. They decided to hunt the Boogeymen. The task fell to General Kraft of the Dominion Death Guard, a decorated veteran whose campaigns had turned moons into glass. He selected an elite kill team, 100 of the Dominion's deadliest shock troops, clad in adaptive camo armor and armed with phase repeaters. The plan was simple. Track the humans, corner them, and erase them in a single strike. They started on Vraxis 3, combing through the ashes of Outpost 9. The air still stank of burnt chitin and scorched metal. Blackened Dominion banners flapped weakly in the wind. Crowther, the second-in-command, Captain Relthor, found the first sign of their quarry, a single boot print in the dust outside the old comm station. Human, Relthor hissed. Fresh. Hours old. Kraft studied the print. They're close. We move now. What Kraft didn't realize was that the Boogeymen weren't running. They wanted to be followed. Walsh had spotted the Death Guard scouts 3 hours before Kraft's main force arrived. From his position on a ridge, he'd watched them fan out, methodical and disciplined. Whole Death Guard unit. Walsh whispered into his comm. Heavy gear. Hunting us. On the other end, Mason's voice came back calm, almost bored. Good. Let's give them something to find. The Death Guard moved into the ravine at dusk. The setting suns painted the rock walls blood red. Overhead, carrion birds circled lazily. The first trap went off 15 minutes in, a small one meant to test their reactions. A section of the ravine wall crumbled, sending boulders tumbling into the vanguard. 2 soldiers were crushed before they could dive clear. The rest of the unit snapped into defensive formation instantly, weapons raised, eyes scanning the ridges. They saw nothing. Kraft signaled forward. Push on. They're close. Another hour. Another trap. This time, a shaped charge hidden under loose gravel blew the legs off 3 soldiers before they knew what hit them. Relthor snarled. They are bleeding us 1 cut at a time. Kraft's mandibles twitched. And we will cut back. Night fell fast in the ravine. Dominion night vision optics flickered to life, bathing everything in shades of green. The Death Guard advanced cautiously, leapfrogging their formations. Then the optics began to fail. One by one, soldiers' displays fuzzed with static. EMP, 1 trooper growled, slapping his helmet. That was when the first scream came, short, sharp, cut off by wet sound. Relthor spun. Report. No answer. Another scream, this time from above. A body hit the ground in front of them, throat slashed, eyes wide in shock. The Death Guard opened fire, plasma bolts scorching the rock walls. A voice cut through the chaos, low and calm. Masons. Come on, you bastards. Keep shooting. Waste your ammo. Vance moved through the shadows like water, a knife in each hand. He weaved between the Death Guard's rear ranks, cutting them down before they even felt the pain. Torres was above them, darting along the ridge with a silenced carbine. Every shot took a soldier through the visor. No misses. Briggs' charges went off deeper in the ravine, collapsing choke points and forcing the Death Guard to funnel exactly where the humans wanted them. Doc followed Mason, shotgun booming in the dark, each blast sending shockwaves bouncing off a stone. The Death Guard formation crumbled in minutes. Discipline dissolved into panic. Kraft roared orders, dragging his troops into a tight defensive circle. Hold your ground. They can't break us if we... A single suppressed shot took Relthor through the head mid-sentence. He dropped, armor clanging against stone. Kraft's roar faltered. His troops looked to him for direction, and in that heartbeat of hesitation, the Boogeymen struck again. Walsh's shot was a signal. From 3 angles, the humans hit at once. Explosives lit the night in a roar of fire and shrapnel. Plasma bolts flew wild, most hitting nothing. Mason drove into their flank, rifle spitting death in precise bursts. Torres cut through the rear guard, knives flashing in the firelight. Vance hit the other side, silent as a grave. Kraft swung his repeater wildly, catching a glimpse of Mason through the smoke, and froze when the man smiled. "You're not hunting us," Mason said. "You're feeding us." Then he was gone again, a shadow swallowed by the flames. By dawn, the ravine was silent except for the crackle of burning debris. The carrion birds had landed now, picking at the bodies strewn across the rocks. Kraft stumbled through the carnage, bleeding from 3 wounds. He was one of the last alive. His armor was scorched, his weapon empty. A voice spoke from the ridge above. "Walsh, you brought 100 men to kill us. You should have brought more." Kraft looked up, and in that moment, just before Walsh's rifle cracked, he understood what Zorvath had tried to tell them. The Boogeymen weren't soldiers. Soldiers fought wars. These men ended them. 3 days later, Dominion Command intercepted a transmission on a frequency they'd thought secure. "This is Mason Kane. We're done here. Send your next team if you want." "Oh," a pause. "Stop calling humans cowards." The channel went dead. The Dominion didn't send another kill team immediately. They needed time to understand what they were really dealing with. But the Boogeymen weren't waiting. They had another target already marked. And this one was personal. Dominion Prime was supposed to be untouchable, the fortress world at the center of a galaxy's largest empire. Its skies were wrapped in orbital defense grids. Planetary shields shimmered faintly in the upper atmosphere. Streets of the capital, Zarel, were patrolled by drones with disintegrators. The Council had bragged for centuries, "No enemy will ever reach the heart." That belief cracked the night 4 small, unregistered ships slipped past the outer net without triggering alarms. No formation, no signatures. They just drifted in, ugly and asymmetrical. Intercept fighters scrambled. But before they reached them, the ships vanished from sensors. That night, the capital suffered its first blackout in 200 years. In a neglected worker block, 53 floors up, Mason Kane stood at a cracked window. The city skyline glowed in the distance, but whole districts below were dark. Briggs wired charges to the apartment door. Torres checked his knives. Doc sorted gear on a battered table. Walsh cleaned his rifle. Van sat against the wall, eyes closed. Eli Ward, the boy from Vraxis 3, sat apart, watching them. He'd begged to come. "You said this one was personal," Eli said. Mason didn't look away from the skyline. This is where they called us cowards, where they made beating humans legal, where they laughed while they broadcasted that Earth was broken." Eli's voice was quiet. "So we're here to kill them." Mason toned. "No, we're here to erase them." They moved at midnight. The megacity was a maze of surveillance, drones, checkpoints, facial recognition grids. The Boogeymen didn't move like rebels. They moved like they belonged. Torres led through underlevels smelling of rust and rot. Briggs looped camera feeds. Walsh broke down and rebuilt his rifle in seconds at each checkpoint. Van slipped ahead to clear choke points before the rest arrived. They reached their target, the broadcast relay hub beneath the council tower. Destroy it, and every core world communication would go dark. They got inside without an alarm. Then one guard caught a reflection of Torres' movement and fired. The shot missed, but the sound lit the complex in red lights. "Guess we're doing this the fun way," Briggs muttered, slapping charges to the next door. The blast tore it open. Mason went first, rifle barking in short bursts. Doc followed, shotgun booming. Van slipped along the walls, silent and lethal. Walsh stayed back, every shot a kill. The Dominion countered hard, powered armor troopers with heavy repeaters. The humans didn't trade fire. They vanished into side passages, reappeared behind their targets, hitting weak points in the armor. Torres slid under a sweeping blow, knife up through a visor. Briggs microcharge blew a trooper's leg off. They were cutting apart the Dominion's elite in their own capital. The hub's control room was a cathedral of glass and steel, banks of glowing servers humming with the Empire's heartbeat. Briggs dropped his duffel. 4 minutes once I hit the trigger. The far door blew inward. General Kraft stepped through, the same commander from the ravine, armor scorched, black eyes burning with rage. 20 Death Guard survivors followed. "I told them not to underestimate you," Kraft growled. Now I kill you myself. Mason raised his rifle. You're late. Gunfire filled the room. Walsh took the high ground. Torres wove between server stacks. Vance went straight for Kraft, herding him toward Briggs' explosives. The timer hit 30 seconds. Out! Mason barked. They withdrew in perfect cinch, covering each other as they moved. Eli followed Mason's hand signals without hesitation. They reached the surface just as a blast tore through the underground. Streets buckled, glass shattered, and a column of fire punched into the night. Every Dominion broadcast went dead. In the blackout's first hours, the galaxy saw one last image from the capital. 6 human silhouettes walking away from the flames. Mason's voice over it. You called us cowards. Now you can call us something else. In the council chamber, panic boiled. Without comms, they couldn't coordinate defenses. Rumors flew. Some said the humans were already inside the tower. Others that multiple cities were under attack. One counselor spat, terrorists. Another whispered, no, these are soldiers. And somewhere below, the Boogeymen were already gone. The council's pride didn't allow for retreat. The blackout had shaken the Dominion's grip on the galaxy, but instead of pulling back, they doubled down. 3 days after the destruction of the broadcast hub, the council issued an order. Every available unit, Army, Navy, and mercenary, was to converge on Dominion Prime and scour the city for the humans. They didn't care if entire districts burned. They didn't care how many civilians died. They wanted the Boogeymen's heads mounted on spikes, and they were willing to kill the entire capital to get them. The hunt began with sweeps, drones, gunships, infantry combing the streets. The Boogeymen stayed ahead of them, slipping between sectors just before lockdown sealed them off. But Mason knew the net was tightening. We can't keep running inside their stronghold, he told the team. If they box us in, we're done. Briggs grinned like he'd been waiting for this. So we hit back harder. One last time. Mason nodded. Not just harder. Final. We end it here. Eli, sitting in the corner cleaning a sidearm Torres had given him, looked up. How? Mason's eyes were cold. We cut the head off the snake. The head was the council itself, the 13 members who controlled the Dominion fleets and armies. They rarely left the council tower, but in the chaos after the blackout, they had moved to a fortified command bunker beneath the military quarter. The bunker was the most secure location on the planet, or it was supposed to be. The Boogeymen didn't see it as a fortress. They saw it as a target. They went in during a riot. The city's lower wards had erupted after days of food shortages and random executions by soldiers looking for humans. The Dominion's own citizens had begun turning on them, burning patrol vehicles and storming garrisons. The Boogeymen moved through the chaos disguised in scavenged armor, helmets concealing their faces. They reached the bunker's perimeter under the cover of a crowd surging against its gates. Walsh took the first shot, a single round through the eye of the gate's Overwatch sniper. The crowd didn't even notice. The noise of the riot swallowed it. Briggs planted a breaching charge on the service entrance. The explosion wasn't huge, just enough to drop the door. Mason was first through. Inside, it was all white light and cold steel. The corridors echoed with boots and shouted orders as Dominion soldiers scrambled to respond. The Boogeymen moved fast. Torres and Vance cleared corners with knives and suppressed pistols. Doc handled the wounded. They're wounded, not the enemies. Briggs and Walsh covered the rear. Every turn took them deeper. Every kill was quick, clean, and silent when it could be, until they reached the inner blast doors. The blast doors were 3 meters thick, layered with alloy and shielded. Briggs knelt beside them, pulling out the last of his charges. "This'll open it," he said, "but it'll bring every soldier in the sector down on us." Mason glanced back at the team. "Then we finish quick." Briggs' detonation shook the bunker like a quake. Smoke poured through the breach. The council's chamber wasn't grand, just a circular room filled with holder screens and command tables. But the people inside, they were the Dominion's core. Mason stepped in first, rifle up. "Don't move." The councilors froze. One hissed, "You can't be here." A single shot from Walsh cut him off. Mason walked to the center of the room. "You've called us cowards. You've enslaved our people. You've burned our worlds. We're here to make sure you never do it again. Croft was there. His armor was gone, his wound from the last fight still fresh. His black eyes burned with hate. Kill me, and you'll be hunted forever. Mason's voice was calm. We already are. Croft lunged. Vance intercepted him, blades flashing in a blur. It was over in 3 moves, a cut to the wrist, a stab to the thigh, and the final slash across the throat. Croft collapsed, choking, gurgling. The remaining counselors didn't fight. They didn't beg, either. They just watched as the Boogeymen placed explosives around the chamber. Briggs set the timer for 60 seconds. Let's go. They were halfway to the surface when the bunker erupted behind them, the shockwave chasing them through the corridors. The riot outside drowned in silence as the ground heaved, a plume of fire and debris punching into the night sky. When the smoke cleared, the bunker was gone, nothing but a crater. The Dominion Prime military quarter went dark. Command channels fell silent. Entire sectors of the capital stopped receiving orders. Without the Council, the Dominion didn't have a voice. By dawn, the Boogeymen were ghosts again. They left Dominion Prime the same way they had arrived, unseen, unchallenged. Their ship slipped past crippled orbital defenses and into the black. On a dozen worlds, Dominion garrisons suddenly found themselves leaderless. Resistance movements rose overnight. And in every whispered conversation, in every fearful rumor, one name spread like fire. The Boogeymen. Weeks later, on a mining colony far from the core, a Dominion patrol found a single data pad lying in the dust. They activated it, and Mason's voice played. You called us cowards. You thought surrender meant submission. But we don't surrender. We don't forget. And if you ever come for our people again. A pause. We come for you. The transmission ended. The patrol captain dropped the pad like it was burning his hands. Because they all knew, somewhere in the dark, the Boogeymen were still out there, watching, waiting, and ready to move the second someone gave them a reason.